Yeah. So, yeah, the big thing, message to market match, like what's the simplest way I know to look at it is that, okay, so we have message here and we have information going from common information that's easily acquired to uncommon wisdom. And so going up the scale there, and then the market, the who we're talking to. Are we talking to people who are chasing fantasies, or are we talking to people who are facing reality? And so we get different responses to our message depending on who we're marketing to or who's seeing it. And so quite often putting out these common information, a lot of cliches, a lot of repeat of the famous things that people say, putting it in front of fantasy chasers. You can get a lot of likes on those sorts of things, sometimes comments. But usually, if we're marketing in front of fantasy chasers, we can get a lot of empty comments, even with the great information.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, we can all tell, like, the, yeah, bro, you nailed it sort of thing, sorts of comments that just like, or perfectly said. That's my favorite empty comment. Perfectly said. Okay, I know that person is not going to do anything with that thing that was said there if they're saying that. But then when we're aligning to people who are facing reality, people who have tried and failed in their stuff, then when we put that common information in front of them, they're just going to scroll by. They've seen it a million times.
Yep.
They've heard all the Tony Robbins quotes, all of the Zig Ziglar, whoever it is, Marianne Williamson. They've heard all the quotes, and so they just scroll by it. And so what we have to do is position our uncommon wisdom in a way that gets these people to raise their hands in some way or another. One is commenting, yes, I want that thing, or they click a link and they go over to sign up for a lead magnet, but something that is getting them to raise their hands. And then the more we get this dialed in of the best message to the right people, that's when buyers happen.
And that's the way to shorten the path. And that is the way that you can skip the line and not do all of the crap that everybody else tells you need to do. You need to skip the common information and the fantasy chasers, and we get to people that are living in reality with novel ideas and with uncommon wisdom. And if you probably already have something that you help people with, it's probably already there.
Yeah, and to me, the big thing, the reason I have leverage on here is because when we find these messages that resonate, that's what I'm experimenting with all the time on Facebook is like, okay, what gets people to raise their hands and say they want that thing? Then we have leverage because we have a proven message that we can just put out in front of a bunch more hungry people.
Yep.
Instead of living on the content creation hamster wheel where I got to try to find another message and another message and another message. Like, no, let's find good messages and just put them out in front of more people.
Well, and here's the other challenge is that social media algorithms feed off of that common info fantasy chaser type of interaction. You get more likes, you get more empty comments, you end up with more interaction. That's the kind of interaction that the algorithms feed off of, where really we want to skip the line and we want to end up with people that raise their hands and then get in front of more people that will raise their hands and actually do something, right?
Yep.
Is that
yeah?
I'm just trying to understand if I'm hearing you correctly.
Yeah. And even part of the way that I think about it is that it's like these are the dopamine interactions.
Ooh.
Of like they feel good in the moment, and so they cause us to go and create more of this content that appeals to fantasy chasers, because at least I got engagement. Like there's that immediate, oh, look, I posted this thing and people are clicking like, yes. Oh, that's awesome. Perfectly said. Yes. All right. And so it feeds that dopamine reaction within us. And I mean, I find myself a lot of times I'll post something and I'm like, oh, that was stupid. I'm erasing that damn thing. I don't want that post out there because I know who it's appealing to.
So could I say that that left side is dopamine and the other side is dollars? We get up into that
Yeah,
green color.
I think so. I
Um,
think so.
I don't know. I get
Yeah.
a pretty
Oh
good
yeah.
dopamine hit off of making sales and getting people results. So maybe I like
Right.
that better.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, for sure. Exactly. And the other thing that I was going to say is that so this is the majority of content that is created. Well, it's more this this stuff here, this common information. And guess what AI feeds off of? Common information that gets more empty comments. Like this whole thing has a big cycle that just keeps it going, that self perpetuates or whatever. And so this is why like most of the AI things, even the ones that are getting smarter, that are dialing in, they're still going for these things.
That's what they feed off of.
Right. And so,
This is the
okay.
zombie apocalypse of content, man.
Yeah. Yeah. And so here's one other piece that I want to say about it as well is I I'm in danger of this all the time. It's the dilution effect
Hmm.
of like the more crap we put out there, then the more well the way this stuff loses its potency is if we have way too much content. Like great content needs to be left in isolation so that we can get focus, because if we get somebody engaged with one great piece of content and then we have a bunch of things that are mediocre because we want to feed the algorithm and that sort of thing, then our best stuff starts losing value because we're putting too much crap out there along with it.
That's a great point. So
So
less of the right type of messaging and then delivered with as much leverage as possible.
right, exactly. To delivered to the people who are hungry for it. Like it's like to me, I think about the Gary Halbert thing a lot, where supposedly Gary Halbert asked this question, like, okay, so I'm going to give you any advantage that you want. Like, let's say we'll put up hamburger stands. I'll have my hamburger stand right across from your hamburger stand. You can have any advantage you want. What do you want? And then I'll pick my advantage after that. And so the first person would say the best ingredients, or, compelling signage, or, whatever, these sorts of things. And you can't say better location because they're right next to each other. And Gary Halbert would say, great, perfect. You can have all that. I'll take a hungry crowd.
Every single
Like
time.
yeah. And so like we forget about the hungry crowd part of it. And then making an offer to a hungry crowd is much easier than like trying to convince everybody and anybody how great our stuff is.
Well, so it sounds like taking this approach, we create our own hungry crowd.
Right. Well, to me, creating it or at least curating it, and
Right.
like that's I don't know. And yeah, it is creating, it's curating it, because we market in a way to get hand raisers instead of commenters and people who are just not really that into whatever the thing is that we're doing. Like they're scrolling Facebook, social media all day long looking for stuff to click on and comment on instead of actually doing something that's productive.
All right. That's good stuff.
Yeah. Can you hear these leaf blowers out here or not?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, cool. Because it's super loud right outside my office right at the moment.
No, man, I got
Cool.
nothing. I can hear it rain outside.
Okay. Wow. All right. Cool.
I love this.
Cool. But
This is a cool message. Like, I think this is a cool predecessor to like throwing some basic gasoline on the fire and
yeah. Yeah.
getting people real
I,
leads.
mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. And like being able to even recognize the difference between, like, I don't know whether you call it a prospect and a lead. And to me, the fact is, like, somebody's got their hand raised because they're hungry for a thing that we're offering versus just having somebody, whatever that is, accessible through whatever Facebook friends and stuff. Like, those people are definitely not leads, no matter what I call them. Only people that raise their hand are leads.
Yeah. That that are engaged with each specific message or with each specific offer. Like,
Right.
that's when you become a
Exactly.
lead. Is
Yep.
otherwise you're just an audience. And
Yep.
we need both. I mean, we need an audience to filter leads through,
Exactly. Right.
but
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
if we have an audience full of people that are empty commenters and likers and essentially just fantasy chasers, I like the label, then we have a pretty significant problem because we're not selling people fantasies. And
Right.
at least you're not, I'm not. And anyone else who does something that actually gets people results and you care about people, you're not playing into their fantasies. You can take those fantasy chasers and move them into reality, perhaps, but that's a hard process. I'd rather go find people that have already been through all the fantasies and they're actually ready to do something and talk to those people.
Yeah. And it's even talking to them differently as well, right? Because almost every market, people coming in are almost always chasing a fantasy because they're usually following some big unrealistic promises. They've got something that they're escaping and they think, oh, finally the greener pasture. And so they need to try and fail so that they come to reality of, like, oh, whoa, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Okay, this is more complex than I thought. And so it takes having some true experience and wisdom in the field to be able to talk to the reality facers, because they see through the thin stuff that like that, because every niche has some people that are over promising stuff that they can't deliver, and reality facers have bought enough of that they can see through it now, and so they don't fall for it anymore.
Yeah. And I'm wondering if the shortcut between those two, because generally speaking, I'm thinking a fantasy chaser is a less sophisticated consumer and a reality facer is a sophisticated consumer. Like, you've already
Yep.
gone through, you've seen the puppet strings.
Yep.
Can we shortcut more of that if we just stop with like the bullshit marketing speak and just genuinely be honest with people and tell them the fucking truth? Like, if you actually have something remarkable, novel, and unique that helps somebody, can you just tell them that? And reality starts to look pretty good when people are telling the truth. It's just that if you try to put lipstick on reality, the same lipstick looks the same on reality as it does on fantasy. So either way, you look like you're full of shit.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So there's a
Mm-hmm.
pretty solid shortcut to that. And at least in my experience, and I mean, it's certainly what I guess that's what we teach in our piece of the puzzle.
Yeah. yeah, and like every market, it seems like it's built on promises that keep escalating until they become hype.
Yeah.
And then we, if we try to beat the hype crowd with better hype, we're attracting the wrong people for one thing, losing, I don't know, to me, like I can't sleep with myself around that. And a lot of people, I think, feel the same who have legitimate expertise. And so there's that side of it. But it's guaranteed if we're playing the hype game, we're going to attract fantasy chasers because that's what that game is designed for. Is like, okay, let me get the fast dollars from the new people coming into this niche.
Yeah. Well, it's not sexy. It's not sexy to do the simple things and do the simple thing
Right.
over and over and over. But it's the most effective. And I think once you get through all the fantasy and you get to reality, most of the time people recognize that, oh, I didn't need any of that stuff.
Right. Right.
You get to the simplicity of it. I was thinking about this while I was surfing this morning, because surfing's relatively, like, you go in waves. Like, sometimes you feel really good, even if you've been doing it your whole life. Sometimes you feel really good, and then other times you're shit. And whenever, and I started thinking about the things that actually made me better over all of my life of surfing. And the two things were, the first coach that I ever hired was for paddling. And so paddling is just going from one place to the other and catching a wave. And that made me a better surfer. And that's the foundation. I always go and practice paddling. And then a year or so ago, I was not surfing well, and I hired a coach. And this coach, for 21 days in a row, worked with me on nothing but the takeoff in one direction. So, and those two things have made a bigger difference than everything else I've done over years and years and years, is paddling and takeoff. Because without that, you can't get waves. And that, I think, when we break this down for like marketing or selling shit or whatever, it's exactly the same thing. We have to do like one thing that is the foundation for everything else, and just get good at it. Just get good at that one thing. If you get good and smooth at that one thing, then everything else works. And like you're talking about, messaging is one of those things, like just getting that message right or being able to validate it so that you're confident. Because the biggest thing, I think, is your own confidence, right? Like, I feel good about this. And if you can actually help people, which you have to be able to do, then you don't need that many tricks. You need to be able to build an audience. Like, you need to be able to build an audience, and as simply and as controllably as possible, which is basically what I think you have an email list for.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So here's a thing that's there. I think for most people, definitely for me, is that when we have helpful expertise, it's usually come because of something that we really like to do. And so we keep learning and that sort of thing. And so there's this potential of feeling like, oh, am I being boring if I keep saying the same thing over and over again? Because stuff that's just like exciting to me is going to lose the audience, and stuff that is completely boring to me, the right pieces of that are going to be mind-blowing to them. And so to me, we need to outsource boredom works. That's how I'm thinking about advertising.
The boredom that works
is like, okay, it's boring, but it works. And so I've already said it. So advertising is putting it out in front of as many of the right people as possible, so I don't have to say it anymore.
Dude, I really like that. That is That's really simple. That's a great illustration of that one idea, because that is absolutely true. Like all of us that are coaches, creators, or generally we go down a rabbit hole because we're either super interested in it, something that we love, we want to know everything about it, or we're solving our own problem. And no matter what, the further you get into it, the more complex you get, or the more layers you unravel, and then you're so far away from the person that you can actually help that part seems mundane and boring. And that mundane and boring part is the thing that can help right now. And advertising outsources that. So you don't have to do the boring part. You can just keep saying the boring stuff over and over and over to new people.
Right. And that goes with that. I don't know. I did some research on this. I couldn't find it attributed to Jim Rohn, but is, I think, this guy Horace Greeley or something like that. But the first piece, find something good to say. Or find something worth saying. So if we have something that helps people, that is worth saying. So like, all right, okay, hey, I have something helpful. That in itself makes it valuable to other people, which makes it worth saying. Then the second part, he says, and say it well. And so it can be worth saying if we say it poorly, even to the right people, they don't take action. So we have to figure out how to say it well, which means it's still in alignment for us and gets people to take action. So when those two things happen, then comes the third part, which is the boring piece. And say it often. Keep saying it over and over and over again. But we have to like manually do the first two pieces of figuring out what the heck is it that stays in integrity with us, worth saying, and that gets people to take action. Then let advertising repeat it for us.
Yep. And then you just need a mechanism to bring people into your world at that point. It's a piece of cake.
Exactly. Yep.
That is, that's perfect. Find something worth saying, say it well, and say it often. And that should be the whole hamster wheel. There's no hamster wheel of constantly creating new stuff. It's constantly iterating basic ideas so that it resonates with people that make sense for you, that are the kind of people that you want to hang out with.
And so if we think about social media marketing, social media, just like posting and organic social. So like it or not, there's a reality for me is I'm never going to have hundreds of thousands of followers. I've tried the different things of the, how can I be more popular or grow? I'm not. And the vast, vast majority of us never will. We don't have whatever that is. I don't even know what it is. And so people who claim that they can give it to people or whatever, I haven't seen that work either. And I've seen a lot of people try to grow massive followings. And so this is a place where I think, I don't know, for me, I had to try and fail. Maybe everybody has to try and fail. And so, okay, so I'm going to have a limited organic reach. I have 2,000 friends or whatever on Facebook. And then Facebook is going to limit how many people get to see anything that I do. And so it is insanity for me to figure out how to create so much content that some Facebook lets a little bit of it through to that tiny audience who's scrolling their feed for all of this other stuff, to think that I'm going to build a multi 6-figure, 7-figure business on that approach is insanity.
It seemed crazy to me. I mean, I'm super contrarian, and I love that the way you put that is true. My contrarian approach to that is, how can I limit my social to almost nothing so that I don't have any organic, I have almost no organic social, and still do that exact same thing. And it seems to be doing okay. I have a very small
Dude,
following, but most of the people that follow me give me money.
okay. I'm going to tell you a thing that just, I hate to admit this, but so with what you just said, here's my problem often, and I think it's a problem for other people as well, is when looks like organic social is working, that reinstills just a little bit of hope. And so we keep going for it again. It's funny. There's this dude, I'm pretty sure B.F. Skinner, one of those older psychologist dudes. And like they did these experiments with rats and stuff of like putting a cheese in the maze and the rat would find its way to the cheese. But then they would remove the cheese and a rat would check once and it's like, okay, no cheese there. And so it wouldn't keep going back. But he said something to the effect of like, yeah, a human being is the only creature that you put $1 there once and they're going to keep checking it every day, even though they haven't seen it for months. Like it's this insanity of just getting those occasional jackpots. I mean, I think this is probably, very related to why people spend a lot of time at slot machines and those sorts of things, or horse racing, or whatever their thing is, of like you get that adrenaline shot once in a while, and like we make up these, back to chasing fantasies of like, oh, bet it's going to be there again. Oh, I was so close. I can make this happen more. Whereas with your approach, you're not trying to do it on organic social, so you're not getting those false hits of like, oh, I bet this could work.
That is, I really didn't think it was much more than self-preservation, because I didn't like the feeling of trying and failing. Like, I don't want to try all of that stuff, and I don't want to do that stuff in public because it doesn't make sense. And I always just attribute it to how old we are, and that like the idea of social media doesn't make sense from just an interaction perspective. Like, I like human interaction, but maybe it isn't. Maybe it's purely because I really like that by limiting that, and this is just by accident. I don't think this is because I was smart. I turned that off, and it forces me to find a way that I can only judge results based on reality. Like, there is just data.
Yeah.
If I do this and I send it here, this is what happens. And so it's all just data. It's not like a popularity contest. It's more like, did this work? Did it not? In this combination, I know this is what happened. And that's all. And so it's always just cut and dry, black and white. It makes it simple, and it doesn't hurt your feelings so bad.
Yeah. And so just a little more like confession, just inner workings of how this has been for me, is what I think is probably true is that if you're reasonably good at what you do, reasonably articulate, that you can post a bunch of stuff on social media and get some occasional sales. And the big problem is that it's not a direct correlation and not a direct system. But for me, what I've done is then just like make up a bunch of stuff in my mind of, oh, I bet it's because I did this time. And so then once again, like I'm trying to go back into the maze to find that same piece of cheese, but that same piece of cheese was not true in the first place. It was just like, who knows how the things happened to be that day. It's not like directly connected to my actions. Whereas with a system, then the actions and the results are directly connected. Whereas with social media marketing, the occasional results are just, they're not connected to the actions in the way that most people think about it.
Dude, thanks for sharing that. That's really super interesting, especially coming from you, because you are a really smart guy and you can help, like, I mean, you can help a ton of people. And this is happening, I assume, probably for everybody in the situation where you're really good at what you do and you're really good at articulating what you do and putting messages out there, and still you run up against this same struggle. And it's kind of fascinating. I mean, it's fascinating. I just appreciate it because it's like a window into this that I don't understand, and I just thought I was being lazy.
Yeah. So let me tell you another wrinkle here, just that I'm thinking about as well. So I there are a lot of people's who I like them as people, but I don't like their social media persona.
Mm-hmm.
And so I unfollow them. I would guess that the exact reverse is happening too. That there are a bunch of people who might like me as a person, but don't like my social media persona and who have unfollowed me. And so there are two things about that. So one is, all right, so my reach is even more limited than the false number of Facebook friends, right? So that's even more limited. And then of course, Facebook's like their limited distribution of organic content. But the other side is, back to just a more confessional here, is like sometimes those people are in my head as far as, oh, I bet so-and-so is going to think this is a stupid message. And like, they're not even seeing the things, for one thing. But this shift of out of organic into, even if it's small amount of paid advertising, is like there's some freedom there just in like this being anonymous in a way. Like, of course the person's going to see you, but it's like, oh, I'm not going to run into this person at a party or at an event or something like that. I don't know. There's just another wrinkle in there that I was just thinking about.
Dude. All right. So now I step into the confessional, and you just fucking nailed exactly why I don't do social media, is because of that.
Okay.
I never want to run in that person. I like the anonymity of things. I've always liked the anonymity of being behind the scenes and not being the big persona. I still love to be on stage when I can see everybody in front of me, but if I can't, I don't like that. And so paid traffic has given me that freedom too. But man, I don't know if I've ever even articulated that. But it is like a certain amount of, well, I guess you would call it anonymity, even though it's making you more public and it's making your reach more broad. They're not people that you know, and the only people that engage with that are people that are going to have something interesting with a genuine message that you want to put out there, not the persona that you're putting.
Right. Yes. And just that repetitive nature that's required of it, of having to keep saying it. And so I will easily openly confess to so many times of like, this sounds like the same thing, I'm not going to post it. And that's because I'm looking at this tiny little pool instead of like, no, let's put messages that work in front of a lot more different segments of the hungry crowd. Because I don't know. I just keep getting blown away at how much bigger the hungry crowd is than we realize.
dude.
Like, if we have something helpful, there are millions and millions of people who want help with that thing.
And it's remarkable. Like, that's the thing that always blows me away. It's blown me away for years. And when we started to scale campaigns, I couldn't believe that like a subset of a subset of a subset of a niche or a market would continue to scale, and we could spend, I don't know, tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars a day and still continue to get profitable results. Like, that to me is just fascinating. There's so many people in anything, like anything you do, if you like nail it, like there are people that will care. I don't believe that there is anything that you could dream up that you couldn't create a business around, because there are so many people that none of us are completely unique. We all have common threads, common problems, common interests with thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people. It is such a big world, and it's amazing how many people you can reach.
Right. And there's even the timing issue, because I was thinking about this part of the health campaign that you've been running for 7 years. There are people who are not ideal buyers for that 2 years ago who are ideal buyers for it today because their situation has changed. And so there's there's that trajectory of like a major change that takes somebody from out of the market into the market. So that timing issue. But then there are just also like conditions that change. Just for example, like whatever, anything in, let's just say, dating and relationship niche. Like, there are always major status changes that are happening there, of like separating versus staying together, moving to a new city, even though I was single there, now I'm single in a new place, or just, whatever the thing is, like there are all of these timing issues. And so we don't know when people are going to be receptive and excited about what we have to offer. But it's so much more like their hunger is like whatever. Like, I was trying to think of, like, there's this amazing pastry chef who she was one of the judges on MasterChef at one time. But like, so if you put her on the sidewalk outside of the hometown buffet where people are coming out of that, she couldn't give away her free desserts. She couldn't even give them away, and she probably charges, I don't know, $50 desserts, or who knows what they are. But there's also just that aspect of timing that's so fascinating.
It's really cool. Man, that's a cool conversation. Like, it's just fun to like even think about how like kind of how all of this rolls, and how you can create so much more leverage almost by giving yourself more constraint. Because we have a tendency to go do the things that we're supposed to do, or become like, create a persona, or this is what I think, this is what gets results, so I have to do that, where you could basically put different constraints on that and go find a different way to get in front of those people, or to find that audience, or to just interact with people as a whole, where you kind of more readily meet them where they are.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, I'm going to tell you another thing that just flashed in my mind as you were saying that, is there's so much that we see build a brand. And like, I saw somebody recently who's calling herself a $1 billion brand builder. And it's just all of these things that people put out there. And what I was just thinking about, that kind of like seems to me like the ultimate version of a brand is you're being the best version of yourself according to your own personal standards, who you want to be and what you want to be doing.
Dude, we should make that into a poster and sell it. Like,
Right.
that's 100%. That should be the goal of all of us for a personal brand, but also like, man, that's like a mission for life.
Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's how you create a life that you really want, is just to be as much of the person that you truly are, and how much you can line up with the person that you want to be.
Right. And I think for most people, the natural result of that, better that we do it, is that it's helpful for somebody. And so, which helpful for somebody to me is equal to there's a hungry crowd for that thing. And so I think there's always a hungry crowd for whoever you think a hungry. I don't have to put my head down on your pillow. You're the one that has to do that at night. And so you're the only one that can know if you're satisfied with what that version of yourself is.
I would go so far as to say that the best thing that you can do for the world, the most altruistic thing you can do, is to become the best version of yourself. And there is always somebody that will benefit from that. And there's somebody that can help. And when you think about how big the world is and how we were just talking about how big markets are, that person is attractive to people that, man, that's how you make a real difference, I think. And people are scared. That is the scariest fucking thing that any of us can probably do, is to just chase the best version of ourselves, because no one else is telling you it's okay. You're the one that has to decide it's okay. You're the one who has to decide this is the best version. This is what will be next. And that's hard, man. That's scary. But holy shit, the other side of that's awesome.
Yeah. Yes. So I heard somebody talking the other day, redefining what self-love is. And he was saying, self-love means that I hold myself to a higher standard than anyone else will, because I know what I'm meant to be. Like, instead of self-love being this weird little fluffy thing where we're letting ourselves off the hook, whereas self-love is holding out for fulfillment, for being that version of ourselves that we know we're here to be.
Yes. And there's no higher, I don't even know what the right word is. I don't know. The primary relationship and being like taking care of yourself. Like, self-love is so powerful, and it's the love that resonates to everybody else. And people tend to like blow that off. Like, no, I can give all my love to other people. You can't. Like, the best version of you, that standard that you hold for yourself, you're the only one that can validate that.
Yeah.
And we can't outsource that. That's the piece you can't outsource. That's where I think it's really hard. I think you're absolutely right. Like, and holding yourself to that standard. You can't get away from it. You do it whether you like it or not. And so self-love is recognizing that and not just allowing that to be, because I would go so far as to believe that probably a lot of depression and mental illness and things like that are just denying that there is a standard that I'm not matching up to, and I'm not willing to do the work to become that person.
Yeah. Yeah. And it can be easy to find the external justifications as well, of like taking that self-evaluation, the standards for ourselves, and choose somebody else's standards for us. This is what dentists do. This is what whatever nutritionists do. All of these things where we can play those games where we I don't know. Here's the best quote that I come up with. This one is from what's her name, Glennon Doyle, where in one of her books she's writing a note to her son, specifically saying, "Your job," like it gets me emotional. Your job is to disappoint as many people as it takes to not disappoint yourself.
Dude, that's such a beautiful and powerful quote. Man, yeah, dude, you almost got me emotional for a second. Like this.
Yeah, I mean, it just, like when I think about it, like that's what I want for myself. That's what I want for everybody that I care about. Like my grandson's 2.5 years old. That's what I want for him. Like, no, disappoint all of these people. Just don't disappoint yourself.
Yeah, that it sums it up. That's what I want for everybody around me. That's what I want for everybody I meet. Like that to me is like, that's on point. That's on mission. Like I want everybody to, I want people around me to live an awesome life. And that's what it takes.
Yep. And so in the whole, so many of the marketing circles, coaching, course creation, whatever circles that I've seen, people, I just see so many people willing to disappoint themselves, hoping that they're getting it right and going to make some money or get some influence or whatever it is. Like there is that level of self disappointment, and I've done it to myself, so I know intimately what it feels like. But that's what I see. And what the hell kind of way is that to create a business so nobody's telling you what to do? Like the most common thing people will say, like, why did you create this business? Because I see and know better, and I don't want people telling me what to do. And then we let everybody tell us what to do if we choose to respond to everything out there and not disappointing them and being willing to disappoint ourselves.
Holy shit, man. That like hit you right between the soul. I don't know. You just dropped the mic after that and fucking walk away. I mean, that's, you just summed up the whole problem with entrepreneurialism right there. Like the amount that you're willing to disappoint yourself in pursuit of something else that may or may not even be your own goal.
Yep. Yep. And so to me, that's what being in business for ourselves is about. Like I often think of it like a frame that I like to think of it is calling first. Like, okay, there's something in me that only I can hear, only I can feel. And so my best word for that is calling. And so nobody else can tell me what that is. Nobody else can validate it. But throughout my entire life, every time I go against it, I'm disappointed with myself. Every time I go with it, I'm like, yes. And so, so just like these three ways that I'm thinking is that we can live calling first, we can live money first, or we can live image first. Kind of the best ways that I've thought about it. And so when I'm running a business, calling first, money is always required. If it's a business, money is required. And so if we put calling first, just like if we put fulfillment first as a human being, we're not putting oxygen first, right? but oxygen is required for a human body to survive. Money is absolutely required for a business to survive. And so if we put calling first, money always comes along because it has to. There's no alternative.
Mm-hmm.
But you flip that around and we put money first. Calling is not required. Calling becomes optional. And the more optional it becomes, the more we're focused on the money, the smaller and smaller calling becomes. If we put calling first, we can't take money out of the equation, period. We just can't.
Absolutely true. It's absolutely true. And at least in my experience, which is pretty significant at this point, every time I've seen the shift go from calling to money and put money first in a business, the money shrinks. At least in terms of net money. The fulfillment definitely shrinks and it goes away. And the money almost always shrinks.
Mm-hmm. And so here's another piece. I don't think I ever told you this one. A way that I think about generosity. And so to me, the most generous thing that we can do for anybody that we're around, much less if it's in a business for our whatever, whether it's partners, customers, clients, whoever, the most generous thing that we can do is back to what we've been talking about, is show up as truthfully to ourselves as possible. That is the ultimate act of generosity, because it gives people permission to do the same thing. And giving people permission to be true to themselves is a hell of a lot more important than giving them instructions or money or anything else.
Dude, I love that so much. That's, well, 100%. I believe that more than anything. That is the best thing we can do for the world. That is the most generous thing we can give. And it's funny because in a lot of circles that looks selfish.
Yeah.
Or at least it'll be considered selfish. And
yeah,
it is the most selfless thing you can do. I would also go so far as to say that, like, giving to things that inspire you is also one of the most selfish things that you can do, and also one of the most generous things you can do, because when you give energy towards something that inspires you, you create more of what inspires you. When you're more inspired, you have more to give. And it's a vicious cycle. But man, you just keep nailing stuff on the head. Like, it's just so, like, that's where, I don't know. I guess we started this as like a business discussion.
Right.
And the reality is that all of those things come together, and your life is not inseparable from your business. Whether you're an entrepreneur or an employee, it doesn't really matter. Like, your effectiveness in business or in any other endeavor is kind of in direct correlation to your effectiveness as yourself, as a human, as the best version of you. Is that safe? I mean, does that seem to match up with what we were just talking about?
Yeah, it does. It does. And another piece that, just to weave it in here, to me, just feels to talk about as well, is courage. So courage takes on challenges that we don't have answers to. Courage, takes on challenges that are meaningful enough that we're willing to put ourselves on the line. And back to that, like, to me, it relates to that not willing to disappoint myself, of like, I think I could do that thing. it would be badass if I did that thing, but I don't know if I can do that thing. To me, that's the only way we can get to fulfillment of taking on challenges that are worthy of that version of ourselves that we want to be.
Man, that is probably the most courageous act. Like, that's fucking scary. Like,
Yeah.
I have so much respect for anybody who like does that, follows their own path, and looks in the mirror and is unwilling to disappoint themselves. That's a hard thing to do, man. That's a hard thing to do. And I don't think I hear very many people ever give that credit as being really challenging or courageous. It's often led to believe that, oh, it must be nice. Like, that person can do it because they have this or they have that, but we don't know what's true for them. We only know what's true for ourselves, and we're unwilling to look because we're always looking outside. It's a really hard thing to do. And man, a little closer every day kind of feels good.
Right. And just like another, like a question I wanted to ask you is, so with this client that you've worked with for several years now, and you're able to generate tens of thousands of leads in 10 days, 47,000 leads in 10 days. I know there's no way in hell that you guys started there. Like I'm just curious, like, just from your observation and your perspective of like how their life and business has changed. And just kind of like, if you roll back to the early days, like what do you remember about them and kind of what they were thinking, how things were going?
Well, it's interesting because none of us I don't know if any of us as humans have changed that much. Like, we kind of started down the right path with the right intention. I think that's why it worked and why it's been so good for so long. But we had no idea. Like, it was just a thing. And of course, over time, the only things that have evolved are like the certainty. Like, we now have like metrics, and it's kind of like, if this happens, I know that's going to happen. Which is one of the things I really like about paid media, is that we can control things, or we can adjust based on what we see. So that's the big thing. I think it actually takes a lot less. It takes a lot less courage and effort today to look in the mirror with this, because we know what we're doing, and we know that we're affecting people in a really positive way over and over and over, and changing lives. And in the beginning, we had no idea. So it was a big risk. It was a risk on all of our parts, because when I started doing that too, like, I didn't take a fee. I just believed in the project. I'm like, I think we can do this. And we thought we could do it together. And so we put as much risk as we could into this project to see if it would work. And then it worked. And then we put more into it, and it got a little bit better. And then we built from it, but it built really, really fast, because we were able to go, like, once it worked, we all knew that this just felt right. And genuinely, all of us are in it. Like, this is a partnership that I'm in. I wouldn't, if I didn't get paid to do this, I still love it so much. I love these people, and I love how it affects the consumers. So I would always do it.
But can you give me just a snapshot though of those early days? A couple of things. One is kind of like early ad spend, and then early kind of like when you look at this person who has this expertise, kind of like what their business and their days maybe looked like.
Well, rather than try to dial this back 8 years, maybe if it's okay with you, I'll give you just an idea of one that we just did, like with somebody who just started.
Oh, perfect.
again,
Yeah, better.
this is
Perfect. Perfect.
somebody else who has a big following, or has a relatively strong following, has been around for a long time, is a super expert in their field, and has a really big heart and just really wants to help people. So they just were experimenting with this reverse course method. And this wasn't me doing it. So this is actually somebody else doing it based on my coaching. And so
Uh-huh.
the ad spend started out really small. Like, he wanted to spend $150 a day, which, I mean, is big for some people, but really small in context. And the first few days didn't work at all. Like, his ads tanked. And then, what I did, or what I gave him, was, hey man, what we need to do is we need to be more honest and just say what you want to say. And from that, we started to see like some hints of life. And this is somebody doing it on their own. So it's even scarier, but it's exposed, and and this is happening. And then it starts to get like some signs of life. And then you start to get some leads, and then you start to see the lead costs come down. And so now we can just inch that up a little bit at a time. And I even recommended he cut that back. Like, instead of being at $150 a day, let's cut that back to like $50 on 3 different things to test. And let's see how it works. And so then we started getting results, and then we can start scaling up inch by inch and spend, and so, we end up spending less than, on this 10-day promo, he ends up spending a little less than $10,000, but the ROAS was still in that 2.5 times what he spent on advertising. So it worked. And so now, next time, he'll have something else to build on and something else to build on. And so if I look back to those early campaigns, I can tell you specifically, I remember the biggest campaign I ever did was 220,000 leads in 10 days. Those guys had a semi-proven model, but I started that with $20 a day because I had no idea if it would work at all. So that's how it starts. That's how small it starts. That one, just
$20 a day.
$20. The first day and a half, $20, and I was like, wow. But I happened to get a bunch of leads for that because I just nailed the messaging.
Yeah. So this one guy that you're talking about, this recent one. So a couple of things I think are pretty cool. It is that, okay, spent 10 grand. And so if somebody has a smaller budget, they spend less than that. But anyway, spent 10 grand, about 2.5x return on that ad spend. So 10 grand turns into about 25 grand immediately, like right now. And then that doesn't talk about all of the people that are now on his list that aren't buyers yet, because there are people who like, okay, I'm interested, but I'm not ready to put down the cash on this thing. And so this is like kind of that next step of like, okay, you get people on the list, but then what do they need to hear to be familiar enough to be like, to see like, okay, hey, here's some legitimate stuff. This guy isn't going away. He's still emailing me. He's got something here, or maybe whatever, something happens in their life. I mean, this is kind of maybe a bad example, but when somebody dies, people's perspective changes.
Yep.
When whatever, neighbor gets in a car crash, maybe something changes. Maybe like there are all of these life-changing events that we don't know are happening in our audience, but just the fact that now he's going to be emailing them all the time, there's going to be that day with a bunch of them like, okay, I'm ready to buy now.
Absolutely. Well, and that's the thing, is you've built an audience. Like, that's the thing, is like, this is just a start, because the reality of any online business is that if you can build an audience and make a profit while you're building that audience, and then you still have the audience, the game's over. Like, now you can do that exact same thing over and over and over and over, and just keep bringing more people into your audience that you control, that you can email anytime you want, and you'll actually reach them. That is the holy grail. Like, sure, only a small percentage of them are customers up front, but that small percentage is customers, and that made all of them profitable. And so now all of the other ones are just a bonus. And that's a bonus audience for, like you said, like throughout the lifetime or the lifespan. Those are people you communicate with, and maybe someday they'll buy something, maybe they won't, but you're going to have a bunch of goodwill, and you're going to be able to affect them in a positive way. And the more that you become yourself, and that resonates, if they get nothing else but resonant energy from you that allows them to be more of the person they're destined to be, then as far as I'm concerned, I've done my job. And like, that pays back in ways that I don't know if you have to take it to the bank, but I can almost guarantee it's going to come back in ways that you don't know, that will also fuel the money thing over here.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. Here's about that as well. Like, just, I want to compare to like organic social. So the reason most people are somebody's friend on social media is usually to try to sell. Like, somebody wants to be Jim's friend so they can try to sell to Jim. Okay. So we have that thing going on out there in social media. So these people are not pre-interested. They're not pre-qualified. They're usually trying to do the opposite. They're usually like, okay, I'm going to pay attention to what Jim says so I can sell him something, not so I can get some benefit from it. So there's a lot of that going out there.
Yes.
But an email list, people have, this is, once again, they've raised their hand. I'm interested in that thing that you're talking about, and from you.
Yes.
And so they are pre-interested. They're pre-qualified on the topic. All of that, in addition to, you can reach them. Whereas with Facebook, it's okay, I'll put a post out there. Maybe 2, 3, 4% of my friends list will see that. Whereas we're talking email delivery, I don't know. I think 80% email delivery would be bad.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, man, that's a pretty interesting point. And you're absolutely right. There are a lot of people that come into your world in social so they can sell you something, but very, very rarely does somebody opt into your email list when they just asking you for help because they want to sell you something. They usually want help from you about the thing that you can help with. And
right. And it's all done in private, right? Where email is an intimate, private thing. Even if you have a massive email list, people open emails by themselves. They don't gather around with a bunch of people. Well, let's open my emails together and talk. No, it's a very private thing. Out on social media, yeah, there's just so much weird posturing. I can't respond to things if I think, oh, people are going to think I'm desperate about this thing, and then I'm going to get all these DMs and all of this stuff. Whereas email, it's a private interaction.
yeah,
Nobody else knows what I'm subscribed to or what I'm trying to get a solution for.
I don't know that there's any other mechanism that you can have one-on-one interaction and relationships at scale. Because every single one of those is exactly like that. You can talk about anything. Like, you can talk about the most embarrassing thing on email and somebody can respond because they know that it's only coming back to you and it's not going back, Like, there's all kinds of stuff people won't talk about on social just because, dude, I don't want to. There's dirty laundry that there is something in almost anyone's closet that they don't want everybody to know.
Right. Yeah, I've heard the comparison, like there's some subjects, like if you post about them on social media, like people responding or agreeing, it's like carrying a book through the airport of, how to fix ongoing flatulence, or something like that.
Exactly. Exactly. And you don't need to identify yourself or like, well, and that's the other thing. It just goes back to, in social media, people are willing to do a lot of stuff to disappoint themselves, not to disappoint others. And
Yep.
that is unfortunate. And again, it's another big reason that I'm not super stoked on building my business or my life there. I certainly enjoy being able to stay in touch with people, but
Yeah, and just coming clean a little bit more just on that earlier part of the conversation, of like, I just wonder how much I've convinced myself that I like it compared to actually liking it. And that piece we talked about of getting the false signals, like once in a while something hits and it's untraceable, it's unknowable, and I can credit myself of like, yeah, see, my perseverance posting, it's finally paying off. And it's just, it's a smoke screen instead of doing this thing that is really systematized, that we can dial in and get repeat results, just like you've done with this one particular client. I'm sure you've done with other people as well, but this one particular client, 7 years of almost the same message, very little tweaking, because it's systemized, it works, it appeals to that hungry market that's out there.
yeah, it's man, it's a hard fight against the dopamine machine that is in your brain and all of the
Yeah.
reward that you get from those things. But just just recognizing it and like your sort of vulnerability of like talking through it is pretty freaking cool. Because it's a hard thing to give up. I mean, I literally live on an island, and I think we all, as entrepreneurs, we kind of all feel like we live on an island. But man, there's also like, you feel pretty connected when you have a list of people that you can reach out to and that reach back out to you on a one-on-one basis. And like that feels, I don't know, at least to me, it feels kind of real, or a lot more real. And I certainly treat it as real because I care about people.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really interesting. It's a different approach, but it's super controllable. It's just super controllable. And yeah, I'd trade the dopamine rush for the dollars on the other side, because that also feels really good.
Right. Oh yeah. I mean, we did some great stuff here recently that I know I was super excited about. Yeah.
Yeah, you do pretty good with the dollars thing too.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I one thing I can verify, I would testify in court to this, that yeah, closing $100,000 in sales by chat in 11 days is a hell of a lot more fulfilling than anything I've ever done on social media.
Well, we could have done that. It's pretty damn cool.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you're going to do that again and again with an email list too.
Yeah. Right. Right. Yeah. I don't know. This was fun. I didn't know exactly where we were going to go, but
dude, we always have the craziest conversations.
Right.
It's super fun, man. I appreciate it.